As NMIXX's promotions for the Love Me Like This era come to an end, and they start with their kind of mini tour, if you want to call it that. They're calling it a showcase tour. But as they begin with what is essentially their first tour and their first introduction into a bigger audience, I think a conversation that still looms over them is if they do work as a six-piece. Losing a member is not easy at all, and to be able to sustain your group post the loss of a member is a big conversation that needs to be had. I mean, when a group is made, it's made with the number of members in mind, in terms of positions, in terms of what talents each and every person brings into the group, in terms of the dynamic, how they look together, how they fit in together. It is very rarely that you have a situation like that of LE SSERAFIM, where one member leaves and the group is better off. So with NMIXX in particular, we do get to see rather quickly what they look like as a six-piece. I didn't think that they would have a comeback so soon without Shinee, but there are aspects to that as well that we have to discuss. So yeah, their most recent comeback, their album's called Expergo, and one of the things that stands out immediately in the title track is the lack of their concept, the lack of mix pop, let's say, that they had established with their first two releases, that being OO and ICE. They have a very distinct sound, right? The whole mix pop thing that they were trying to do, or trying to make their own essentially. aespa had essentially done it before. A lot of SM artists have done it before. Heck, even One Direction had done it at one point of time, where they were mixing two sounds that don't sound similar at all. So it's not a new concept altogether, but to make it the only thing you do when you create music, or to make that mixing of genres that don't blend in together your entire brand, was something unheard of. And that's what we saw with NMIXX, the whole mix pop concept. And they did it in OO and it didn't work. I mean, the song was hailed one of the worst songs to ever exist. Then they did it with DICE and it was much better, but it still didn't hit as much. I think a lot of times K-pop fans forget the difference between a song growing on you and you being accustomed to a song. If you listen to something more and more and more times, you will get accustomed to it. That does not mean it's getting better over time per se. It's just you're getting neutralized to the shock factor that the song brought. So the wave of support that both the songs got a lot later from their debuts on their releases was more to do with the fact that people got accustomed to that, rather than it actually aging well, if I have to say so myself. But they completely ditched the mix pop for this comeback, and I have mixed opinions about it. Mixed opinions about mix pop. But that's kind of how I feel about the situation. I think it is a good direction that they've gone with sonically. Like, Love Me Like This is a great song, right? It's a great song. But it is kind of generic, and even though mix pop didn't work, it still helped them stand out, especially in the competitive market that is the fourth generation of K-pop's girl group scene. So competitive, right? You have so many great groups. You have IVE, you have NewJeans, you have LE SSERAFIM, you have Baby Monster that's coming in. You're gonna have, within the next year or so, the Island group that comes from the second season of Island. So this will be B-Lift's first girl group, so like the company that does hyphen. You also have smaller groups on the rise. You have 50-50 on the rise. We also have, a lot of other groups. The competition is tough. The competition is pretty tough. And they had something that helped them stand out with mixed pop. Like, it was unique to them. But this is what I mean. I have mixed feelings about it. I liked that they had a unique factor, but the music wasn't good. But now that the music is good, it's pretty generic and forgettable. Like, no one's going to be talking about Love Me Like This in a few years. We will still be talking about oh and Dice for that matter when we talk about mixed pop, or when we talk about just songs that are so different and experimental and debuts that didn't stick. We will talk about them, but I don't think we'll talk about Love Me Like This at all. Another thing that stood out to me the most in Love Me Like This was how much the budget went down, especially for the music video. Now, I don't think this essentially has anything to do with them investing less money in the comeback. The way everything is planned, the way the choreography looks, the way the visuals of the song look, it looks like it was made for a 7-piece, and I'm almost certain that they shot everything with Ginny and then she left, so they had to like scramble and do something, so that's why the budget is less. I don't think JYP is intentionally investing less money in them, but that shows. It shows in a very obvious way, which makes it not, the best music video to enjoy. And like I said about the choreography as well, I think NMIXX stand out with their stage presence. Like most JYP groups, they do a very good job with their choreography. And for both oh and Dice, they had great choreographies, and I think that's what Ginny brought to the group the most. Her stage presence, her dancing abilities, her charisma on stage, and I think that blended well. I don't think a lack of a member is heard in the sound of the group. None of the songs sound like that they're missing a voice, and that's because she didn't add much to the group vocally, but she did add a lot in terms of choreographies, in terms of dance abilities, in terms of stage presence, and making the whole group look cohesive on stage. So that is definitely missing. For the Love Me Like This choreography, it looks like it was made for a 7-member group, and 6 people doing it does kind of look odd. And yeah, I think that is the biggest issue with them. I mean, personally, I prefer odd number groups to begin with. I think that's why LE SSERAFIM works better, because after losing a member, they became 5. And that works pretty well as a choreography. And them NMIXX going from 7 to 6 doesn't work that much because they're not an odd number anymore. I don't think this is a controversial take. I think a lot of people agree with this. Odd number groups look better. The choreography looks better with odd numbers rather than even numbers. Even for IVE, a lot of the times, because they're, probably the most successful 6-member group of the generation, it looks a little odd sometimes. But I think, they could have just added a new member in place of Ginny, but that would be very controversial to a lot of people. But speaking of Love Me Like This, it did do really well for the group, right? It got them their first music show win. It did substantially better on the charts, and it is by all means a great song. It kind of reminds me of a lot of early Little Mix, if that makes sense. It sounds very Western pop adjacent. And even the rest of the album is pretty nicely done. If we're talking about the B-side, Young, Dumb, Stupid, even though, it samples a nursery rhyme, so it is very, Disney Channel adjacent, and I'm not particularly fond of that. But the choreography for that and the music video for that is nicely done. And again, I feel like they did it after Ginny left, so the choreography does look more appropriate for a 6-member group than it does a 7-member group. But the entire album, it does have very Red Velvet energy, if that makes sense. I think the most Red Velvet song came before this album. The song Cool of the Dice mini album, that's what it's called, the Dice mini album. The song Cool, the B-side, I think that's the most Red Velvet song they've done. But then leading into this comeback also, they did a very Red Velvet sounding soundscape, which works for them. It's not like it's blatantly ripping off Red Velvet, but you know, JYP's habit of stealing from SM, stealing from Hive, stealing from other companies because he lacks creativity is very prevalent here. So overall, the album, overall the music of the group is nice. You know, the only problem is that it's generic. It doesn't help them stand out like their mixed pop concept did. And you know, I'm kind of sad to see it go. I know I have previously said that I wasn't fond of it, but I would have liked to see them make it their own rather than abandoning it completely. So I really do hope that they bring it back for the next comeback. As for the fact, does the group work as a 6-member group? It does vocally, maybe even with the rap parts, but definitely not in terms of their stage presence and choreography. It looks like there's someone missing. The group looks like it's missing someone. I don't know if that's the best way to explain it or not. I do think their next comeback will be tailor-made to a 6-member group, so it will be better. And for now, what they're doing with what they have is good enough, but I think the next comeback will truly be able to solidify if they work as a 6-member piece or not. But yeah, that's it from me. What do you think? Do you think NMIXX works as a 6-member group? Do you miss the mixed pop sound? Do you wish they'd bring it back? Do you think they should just get another member and start from there? Or what do you think should be the direction that they take for their next comeback? Yeah, that's it from me. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.